When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called his elder son Esau and said to him, "My son." And Esau answered, "Here I am." Isaac said, "See, I am old, and I do not know the day of my death. So take your weapons and your quiver and your bow and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and then prepare for me savory food such as I like, and bring it to me to eat so that I can bless you before I die." So then Rebekah took the best garments of her elder son Esau, which were with her in the house, and she put them on her younger son Jacob. And she put the skins of the kids of goats on the hands and the smooth part of his neck, because Esau was a hairy man and Jacob was not. And then she handed the savory food and the bread she had prepared to her son Jacob. So Jacob went in to his father and said, "My father." And Isaac said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" And Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn, and I have done as you told me. So sit up and eat of my game so that you may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" And Jacob answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Come near so that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you really are my son Esau or not." Jacob went up to his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are like the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, so he gave him his blessing. Then Jacob left Beersheba and went towards Haran, and he came to a certain place, and he stayed there for the night because the sun had set. And taking one of the stones of the place, he put the stone under his head like a pillow and lay down in that place. And he dreamed that there was a ladder set up on the earth, the top of it reaching all the way to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on the ladder. And the Lord stood beside Jacob and said, "I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. And your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And all the families of the earth will be blessed in you and your children. Know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you." And then Jacob woke from his sleep and said, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." And Jacob was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So dreams are a weird business. Cultures have been interpreting dreams from ancient days. There are other accounts of dreams in Scripture other than this dream of Jacob's. The ancient tale of Gilgamesh has some dream interpretation. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung made careers out of interpreting dreams. And you can enter your dreams into numerous websites today and have internet experts tell you what they mean. We're fascinated by dreams, I think, because dreams are so far outside of our conscious control. We can force our minds to, memorize multiplication tables or use them to brainstorm ways to make the world better. During the day, we are able to harness our minds. But then we go to bed at night with a nice stone pillow beneath our heads, and we are no longer in control. I can go to bed at night hoping to dream about George Clooney and Colin Firth inviting me to join them on a yacht, hypothetically speaking, of course, but instead I'm more likely to dream about Sean Connery and I going to a Warriors game, which is a dream I had. Don't put that into a website. I don't really want to know what it means. There are mornings that we wake up and we wish we could return to the narrative of our dreams, even as the details fade away. But no matter how hard we try, we cannot return to that particular dream story It would be easier to catch hold of a cloud or grab a shadow. There are mornings also, though, where we wake up and think, thank the good Lord that was just a dream, because there are some scenarios that play out in our dreams that we could not bear in real life. And then there are some dreams that are really important. I've only had a few of them, but I'm very thankful for them. In college, during a difficult time, I had a recurring dream that I was in a cult and I needed to escape. I was not in a cult, it was just a dream. At first, in the dream, I would wake up pounding against the walls of the building. But as time went on, the dream started the same, but it would change. I would end up running right through the wall and escaping the cult. Needless to say, in my real life, I wasn't trying to get out of a cult, but I needed to know my own strength and my ability to think for myself and to solve my problems. I needed to act for myself. I needed to know I could make the choices I needed to make and that I could survive. Would I have gotten there without those dreams? Maybe. All I know is I'm thankful for them. They helped me dream into myself. And I may have shared this one before, but shortly after Justin and I were married, I was trying to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. I was actively praying for discernment, saying, God, give me a sign. I was thinking about law school. I was thinking about getting a teaching certificate. Either of them would have been fine, but neither of them felt quite right for me. I'd already turned down PhD programs in history because that path definitely did not feel right. At the same time, the church where we were worshiping was hiring a youth director, and in a span of just a couple of weeks, 5 different people asked me if I was applying for the job, and my first response was instantly dismissive. Hell no. High school was a horrible time for me. Why would I ever want to put myself back into that space? And then I had a dream. I was in a college dorm room, and I heard a loud and resonant voice calling my name. Marci, Marci. And I was doing other important things at the time, like reading for the want ads for jobs, and I did not want to get up and see who was yelling at me in the hallway. And the voice was insistent. So I opened the door and looked down the hallway, and there was a giant stone head at the end of the hall, like Easter Island meets Monty Python. And it was God. I knew it was God. And the voice said, I'm trying to answer your question, are you listening to me? And I woke up in a cold sweat, and I applied for the job the next day, and here I am, and I will be forever thankful for that dream, even as it terrified me in the moment. Last week, Joanne preached the story of Abraham's near sacrifice of his son Isaac on an altar. Now, the Bible doesn't tell us exactly how Isaac felt as he and his dad came home from their camping trip / near-death experience. But it would not surprise us to learn that Isaac's relationship with his father might have been affected by that story, and not for the better. And once his mom Sarah heard the story about how her husband had almost killed her one and only son that she had prayed for decades, well, we can imagine things might have been tense in their marriage for a while. We aren't told, but we can imagine. Today's story, though, is at the end of Isaac's life, and a lot has happened since then. And they aren't a picture-perfect family. You can almost see how the trauma of that story from last week has played out. There is deceit and intrigue. Isaac and Rebekah divide the family because they each favor different twins. Jacob first will trick Esau out of his birthright in previous passages, and then today he stole the blessing. And we hear this story and wonder what the big deal is with both the birthright and the blessing. Couldn't Isaac have just blessed them both equally? But in the days when the story was written, it was a cultural expectation that the eldest son is who would inherit the blessing of the father. But Scripture is full of stories where God subverts that narrative. Isaac, of course, himself had already received Abraham's blessing in place of his older brother, Ishmael. And someday Jacob's blessing will fall to a younger son. And generations later, King David will receive God's blessing, even though he has 7 older brothers. These stories are helpful reminders to us that God's blessing is not the same as the world's blessing. We can be rich and famous and powerful and eldest born, and that does not necessarily equal the blessing of God. And I read about the trickery which defines Jacob's story and the trickery of his mother, and I don't love it. I'm too much of a rule follower, I think. Maybe it happens, though, as it does, because women and younger sons have to chart their own paths in worlds that don't value them. But maybe God's blessing would have landed on Jacob anyway, without all the need for subterfuge. Because did you notice there is not a sense in this story that God is fooled by Jacob the way Isaac was? God never says, well, shucks, I had hoped that Esau was going to get the blessing, but what can I do? You got me. God isn't fooled. In fact, God had told Rebekah when the twins were born that the younger brother would supplant the elder brother. So it feels like Rebekah and Jacob's trickery started with God. And it just reminds me one more time that God's ways are not our ways, and that we cannot predict where God's grace or God's blessing will choose to rest, no matter how often we want to confidently proclaim that someone is outside of it. So guard your heart. When you hear politicians say with confidence that people don't deserve to be here in this country or don't deserve to have civil rights or access to education or vaccines or whatever insanity is going on in the news, guard your heart so you don't grow to believe that there are people that we don't have to care for or care about. Even the politicians spewing lies are not beyond God's grace or blessing. And I'm saying that for myself as much as for anybody else out there. We are not in control of God's blessing. Jacob flees his brother's wrath. Esau wants to kill him for having stolen the birthright and the blessing. Jacob flees his father's disappointment, and he heads to his uncle's place where his mother hopes he'll find a wife. And on the way, he has a dream. Imagine how important at that particular moment in his story it is for Jacob to receive divine confirmation about his journey. If I had stolen my brother's blessing and tricked him out of his birthright, I maybe would be wondering about the validity of my journey. Can blessing really be so easily acquired? Is a stolen blessing legitimate? Is this all going to end when Esau catches up to him and kills him as he sleeps? We don't know why God chooses to work through trickery and deceit in people like Jacob. But on reflection, I'm glad God does, because that means there's also room for me in my broken life to be blessed by God as well. In the dream, God tells Jacob, "Know that I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." Jacob doesn't know it yet, but he's headed to live with his uncle who will be his match in trickery. And after this dream, he wakes up in the morning with what he needs to continue his journey with confidence. So what are you dreaming? And when and how has God spoken words that you needed to hear to keep going on your journey? Presbyterians may not really be known for being dream people. We have decently and in order tattooed in our souls, which is how it should be. But there are times, though, when we need that confirmation about the path we're on that is different than the kind of confirmation we can get from GPS. We need divine dreams, dreams that encourage us, dreams that equip us, dreams that point us down a road we wouldn't take on our own. If you've noticed, I never speak about God's will or God's plan. I ask instead that we discern what God might be dreaming for us. This is partly because I worry theologically about the message that God is planning out every moment of our lives, leaving us as puppets on a stage acting out some preordained divine drama. The idea of God's will can leave us feeling like we have no agency, that we are powerless victims to the story of our lives. So if instead I try to figure out where my life intersects with what God is dreaming for me, then I can try to live better into that journey that God could imagine for me, because I know that it is better than anything I can imagine for myself. It doesn't take away my ability to make mistakes, I promise you, but it does allow for God's redemption of whatever situation in which I find myself. It's a little easier to course correct if I think God is out there helping me find a way after I've hit a dead end. Maybe it's harder for a church to dream. How do we discern together what God is dreaming for us? How do we attend to the dreams of a congregation? Your session, one of the elected offices of this congregation, has been seeking to do that, actually. They meet each month and they pray and they seek discernment for the path of this church. One thing that has come up in our discussions is that we need to have community that is, we need our community to develop deeper connections than we're able to do sitting together in worship on Sundays. The all-church retreat over Memorial Day weekend really fed our souls so well. They asked, how can we keep that connection going? And so we're trying a Monday night dinner and program. And last week was our first church night, and 50 of you came to it. And it was such a gift to have time around the dinner table with people I don't always get to visit with. And then the kids went off to children's choir and youth programming, and the adults met for a class. And it's not too late to join. We'll be here again tomorrow night between 5:30 and 7:30 for a potluck dinner and classes. And Joanne will have more details in the announcements. You'll also hear in a minute from Lad Martin, one of our elders, about how you can connect to new ministry teams. It's been a while since we looked at how our committees are structured, and we're hoping this new configuration will help set us up well to do what God is dreaming for us. And I recognize, again, it is the nerdiest and most Presbyterian of things to say that our committee structure is one of the ways we're trying to discern God's dreams for us. But I promise you I am excited about this, because we're hoping this will give everyone a way to participate in the life and ministry of the congregation. Maybe you're wanting to serve on a team, but maybe you're just wanting to help more with a project or an event and not have regular meetings. We'll have opportunities for all of it, because your church needs you and your particular gifts so that we all can live into what God is dreaming for us. What do you think God might be dreaming for us here at Calvary so that we can better share with the world a dream of hope and possibility and grace that transcends our divides and our challenges? It's a real question, and I hope you'll consider it. Jacob woke from his dream and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven." And in the next verse, we're told Jacob rose early in the morning and took the stone he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on it. And he made a vow, saying, "If God will be with me and will keep me in the way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And all that God gives me, I will surely give 1/10 back." The response Jacob has to his dream is that he had faith that that dream would come true, that God would be with him and provide for him and would return him to his family in peace. And then he had a response of gratitude, of giving back to God a portion of all that God was giving to him. May we have similar responses to our dreams. Gratitude and generosity are a good way to live. Jacob dreamt while using a stone for a pillow, and I do not have pillow-sized stones for you, but they would be awkward to take home on Muni. But during the final hymn, I do invite you to come forward and take a stone from the baskets. We'll have them up front, and we'll have them upstairs in the balcony as well. And take your stone home with you and put it somewhere where it will remind you to listen for God's voice in your dreams. Put it somewhere where it will remind you to listen for God's dreams in your life and to remind you of God's promise to Jacob. Know that I am with you, and I will keep you wherever you go. Friends, God is with us. May God keep us wherever we go. Amen.